Good evening, you're watching London Live News with James Dickman. Coming up tonight, forced to sign her name on the dotted line declaring she was guilty of spying charges. Nazanin says she did so under duress as a condition of her release from Iran back to the UK in March. Monkeypox infections in London are rising, with contacts of cases at high risk of having caught the disease. They've been advised to self-isolate for 21 days. We'll have an update on London's weather in the next 10 minutes, also on the way this evening. We'll hear from one optimistic business leader why she believes the next 3 months could be prosperous for small firms in the capital. And the Rocky Horror Picture Show comes to the capital, starring broadcaster and Strictly winner Ore Aduba. We'll hear about the production from a cast member with 2,000 shows under his belt. All of that to come, but first, Boris Johnson insisted Sue Gray was of course able to act independently, but declined to answer any questions about a meeting he had with a senior civil servant about her report into Partygate. Simon Clarke, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Sue Gray, had instigated that the meeting with Boris Johnson a few weeks ago, at which the Partygate report was discussed, was instigated by Ms Gray. However, the PM's spokesperson admitted that Downing Street had instigated the meeting. Mr Johnson spoke whilst visiting a school in Orpington in South London today.
I'm, with great respect, not going to comment on or give any running commentary on her report until we get it. And I think that, to be frank, the moment is not very far off. It can't be long now before I'll be able to say something, but I really want to wait, as I've said for a long time now, until Sue reports.
Did you initiate that meeting, though?
I'm not giving any running commentary on the process in any way until the independent report is produced.
Well,
I think that is reasonable.
Boris Johnson there. Well, things got a little bit trickier for the PM this afternoon as photographs obtained by ITV News have cast fresh doubt on Boris Johnson's claims that he was unaware of rule-breaking in Downing Street during the pandemic. 4 images show the Prime Minister raising a glass at a leaving party on the 13th of November 2020 with bottles of alcohol and party food on the table in front of him at number 10. Well, on that date, the UK was going through its second national lockdown, which meant the rules at the time only allowed for 2 people from different households to mix indoors. Now, also, Nazanin Zahawi-Ratcliffe has said Iran forced her to sign a last-minute false confession at the airport as a condition of her release. She told the BBC a UK official was with her when she signed the statement under duress before the Iranian authorities would let her fly home. Mrs Zahawi-Ratcliffe was released in March, 6 years after being arrested on spying charges. Nazanin, who lives in West Hampstead with her husband Richard and her young daughter Gabriella, always denied the charges and said she was on holiday visiting her family.
I was taken by the Revolutionary Guards to the airport. I did not see my parents. Instead, I was made to sign the forced confession at the airport in the presence of the British government. Whereas...
Could we just pause on that? So that before you left Iran...
Before I left Iran, at the airport...
You had to...
I had to sign it.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able
They told
to
me
leave.
that you won't be able to get on the plane. And I knew that that was like a last-minute game because I knew they told me that they have been given the money. So what is the point of making me sign a piece of paper which is incorrect? It's a forced confession.
To all the things they had been accusing you of.
Exactly. And also the British government not questioning it.
Nazanin speaking with Women's Hour there. Some other headlines from the capital today. Monkeypox infections in London are rising. The capital's public health chief warned today. Contacts of cases at high risk of having caught the disease were advised to self-isolate for 21 days as well. A warning to the squeamish regarding the pictures we're about to show. Professor Kevin Fenton, London's Director of Public Health, also urged people to watch out for unusual rashes or lesions and to contact NHS's 111 number before going to a hospital, a GP, surgery or other health setting. New figures released today show cases are up once again across the UK. 3 men who brutally beat a man with a steering wheel lock have been jailed after they were caught on dash cam planning the attack, carrying out the assault and laughing about it afterwards. Warning, some potentially distressing language on show here.
She nabbed him, she just nabbed him. She just nabbed him. Hey, you man, well, look, I beg you, man, more. You know, if he tries to run, like, drive him over, man, more. You know, you got to ram him more, though, innit?
Mujahid, Ali, Hamza Wahid and Mohammed, all aged 25, pleaded guilty to causing grievous bodily harm with intent. At an earlier hearing, Ali and Mohammed were each jailed for 4 years and 6 months, while Wahid was jailed for 4 years. The court heard how the 20-year-old victim was repeatedly punched and hit over the head with the steering wheel lock after they pulled up alongside him in a BMW. A 21-year-old woman who was stabbed to death in an Ealing alleyway was walking home with her friend when she was attacked. That's according to police today. Anya Jedkowiak died in the early hours of Tuesday last week after being found with stab wounds in Roberts Alley off Church Gardens. Detectives believe there were several potential witnesses they wish to speak to. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer visited a supermarket in South London to learn how the cost of living is affecting consumers at the tills. Starmer was given a tour around Sainsbury's in Nine Elms this morning, along with Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds, where they spoke to members of staff and shoppers. He said the government needs to act fast to tackle an ever-growing problem.
Part of the answer is staring the Prime Minister in the face, and that's Labour's plan for a windfall tax on oil and gas companies and using that money directly to reduce bills by up to £600 for those who need it most. But what's the government doing? It's dithering, it's delaying. Last week they voted against a windfall tax. Now they're saying they're looking at a windfall tax. They need to get a grip of this situation because every day they dither and delay, more people are struggling, really struggling with their bills. I think there's a range of things that need to be looked at, and reinstating universal credit is one of them. There's all sorts of work that needs to be done on benefits as well. But the windfall tax is a simple solution which could be voted through Parliament very easily. It's Labour's plan. We'll vote for it if the government brings it forward. But dithering and delaying is actually the thing that's stopping people getting that money to help them with their bills, because £600 for those that need it most would make a huge, huge difference.
Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer in the aisles of Sainsbury's in Nine Elms. They're talking about the cost of living crisis. Some other headlines for you now. The RMT union is planning a network-wide strike on the London Underground and a ban on staff working overtime over the Queen's Platinum Bank holiday weekend. The union is calling up to 4,000 station staff out on strike on Monday the 6th of June, the day that many Londoners would be returning to work after the 4-day Jubilee celebrations. The action will start a minute after midnight and last for 24 hours. Crystal Palace manager Patrick Vieira will not face police charges following an altercation with a fan at Goodison Park after Merseyside police said on Monday today that no formal complaint was filed. Everton fans invaded the pitch following their 3-2 victory over Palace, which secured their Premier League survival. Well, Vieira was then confronted by a fan as he was walking towards the away dressing room after the final whistle. The fan appeared to provoke Vieira, who then kicked him to the ground and had to be led away by other supporters. Also a football-related story. West Ham defender Kurt Zouma has been charged with 3 offences under the Animal Welfare Act after allegedly harming his cat. Zouma's brother Johan, who plays for Dagenham and Redbridge, has also been charged with 2 alleged offences following an RSPCA investigation. Johan, who's 23, filmed his 27-year-old brother Kurt kicking and slapping one of his pets. Then the Zouma brothers are set to appear at Thames Magistrates Court tomorrow. Tens of thousands of young people will end up in care unless radical changes are made to child protection in England. Well, that's according to the independent review on council-run children's services, who said that struggling families needed early intervention to ensure they don't reach crisis point. Well, the recommendations include phasing out young offender institutions and a drive to recruit more foster parents.
The general state of children's social care at the moment is often children who've been in care finding that they don't have the strong web of lifelong loving relationships that every human being needs to understand who they are in the world and make sense of themselves, build a sense of identity, that the care system sometimes takes those things away from children and leaves them as young adults really isolated. And one of the other problems is that we've got lots of families in England who are trying to raise children in really difficult circumstances because they've either got an addiction, they're in a violent relationship, they're in a cramped, damp house. And when those things happen, we don't do anywhere near enough to help those families get out of those situations. And the cost of that is that things escalate, problems get worse. Now, they're the big problems, but what's been hopeful about the review process is meeting thousands of people who are working in the system, who are desperate to see change happen, and examples right the way across the country of people doing things differently for children and families. And what we're trying to do through the review is mainstream those ideas, bring them into the centre stage. Lots of the solutions to the problems we see are bottom up. The report is filled to the brim with great examples of things that are being done. The problem is they're being done despite the system, not because of it. And that's why we need a radical reset of the whole children's social care system. It's why we're calling for a 5-year comprehensive, ambitious reform and investment programme so that we can set this system up to succeed for the hundreds of thousands of children and families who need it.
Josh McAllister there, a former teacher who led that review into children's social care. Right, time for a check on the weather now. Rain showers are expected to continue this evening in patches across the capital and overnight, clearing up by the morning, but a cloudy start to the day tomorrow. Highs of just 17 degrees during the day. A very similar picture on Wednesday. Thursday also looking quite similar, but getting a little bit sunnier. Highs of around 21 degrees. One more headline before the break. Dogs living in London are the most at risk from heat stroke in the UK, according to a new study. The Royal Veterinary College and Nottingham Trent University found dogs in the capital had double the chance of falling ill than other regions. Heat stroke or heat-related illness is potentially fatal for dogs. The study suggested flats and terraced housing were associated with an increased risk of overheating, and because the ambient temperature in cities like London can be about 5 degrees warmer than in the countryside. Right, coming up in just a few short minutes after a break, a roundup of a dramatic final weekend in the Premier League. We'll discuss the fortunes of champions Manchester City and where the London clubs found themselves in the table after a crucial last Sunday of the season. Welcome back. Let's take a look at some other stories affecting Londoners today. Basic goods and services for a typical family with 2 young children are about £400 a month more expensive than they were last year. Well, that's according to new data from Loughborough University. Energy prices added about £120 to families' monthly costs as price caps rose and cheap tariffs ended. Pay is rising more slowly than prices as well, forcing many families to make tough spending choices. And a Treasury Minister has said that the Chancellor Rishi Sunak is not ruling out a windfall tax on oil and gas companies to help with the rising cost of living. If implemented, it would see a one-off levy imposed on the firm's profits. The proceeds would be put towards offsetting mounting energy bills. Labour, the Lib Dems and the SNP have all called for the tax on the companies who have seen record profits since the economy restarted after the pandemic. Conservative MPs voted against the Labour motion to impose a windfall tax last week. Now, according to new research, half of London's small businesses are predicting growth in the next 3 months. The quarterly data from Nuvuna Business Finance reveals growth in the capital's small firms will even exceed pre-pandemic growth for the same time period. In a time of rising costs, Henry has been speaking to the company's insight manager to see why she's so confident.
Well, it's really exciting news actually for the capital because 49% of London businesses are predicting growth over the next 3 months. So that's a really phenomenal rate of growth, and it's really positive because we all know London businesses have been through some really torrid times recently. You know, the COVID impact has been huge, and the figures have gone up enormously since the start of COVID. If we look back to the beginning of COVID, London businesses, only 20% of them were predicting growth. So for that to go up to 49% now is really exciting news.
Yeah, as you say, small businesses predicting growth higher than pre-pandemic levels. That's quite impressive, isn't it?
It is, definitely. And I know that some sectors have been really impacted by COVID, particularly the hospitality and the retail sectors. And, you know, every sympathy to all those owner-operators in those areas because it was an absolutely awful time for them. The customer base is wiped out in one go. And particularly the hospitality industry, we've seen that's predicting really high levels of growth. And that's really positive for them. I think that's really needed for that particular industry now.
Why do they predict such growth?
I think particularly in London, you know, London is the engine room of the economy. It's always been a hub of innovation. It's attracting those dynamic businesses that really want to move forwards. So I think that's one of the reasons why there's this great positivity in businesses. They've come out of the back of COVID and they're really wanting to drive forward and grow and succeed. And that's really, really great to see. I think typically London businesses have also been really quick to adopt solid working practices after COVID. So when we've looked at what type of businesses and the location of businesses that have put those, you know, quick returns to the office back in or solidification of hybrid working, that tends to be faster in London than in other areas of the UK. And I think that having that solid platform and that knowledge that you have in your business and in your employee base of where you're going to work, I think it means that they've got the ability to concentrate on the how they're going to work and that future growth a lot more.
You spoke a little bit about the hospitality industry there. Are there any other sectors that are predicting large growth in the next 3 months?
Hospitality, as I say, retail's there as well. Across all of the sectors, and the Nuvuna Business Barometer measures about 12 different sectors, and we've been running the research for 8 years now, so it looks at the highs and lows across all those sector pieces, and all of the sectors are predicting more growth than last quarter and obviously more growth than right at the start of the pandemic. So that's a really positive sign. As I say, hospitality, retail, and some of those, most of those other sectors are really looking forward to good growth.
Now, let's talk sport. And in football, the Premier League season came to a close yesterday afternoon. In some dramatic style, Manchester City clawed back from a 2-0 deficit to beat Aston Villa and pip Liverpool to win overall glory. Now, there was some tight contests involving the London clubs as well. And here for a little look back at the day and the season as a whole was Dougie Critchley from Football Daily, who spoke to me earlier. Dougie, it would be remiss of me not to mention it. Man City claiming the league over Liverpool. It got very tight in the end, but perhaps when you look back at the whole season, Man City might have deserved this one.
Yeah, I think they did as well. It's their 4th title in 5 years, and they've been top for the last 23 game weeks. They've won more games, they've scored more goals, they've conceded the same amount. And, you know, in the last 2 fixtures against West Ham and yesterday against Aston Villa, they needed 5 second-half goals to rescue 4 points. And ultimately, when it came down to it, they just showed that character, they showed that quality. Ilkay Gundogan with a double and Rodri with a nice goal from outside the box. And yeah, you feel like it would be a travesty if this Man City side hadn't won a trophy this season. I just felt that across the season, Man City were probably more consistent. They were more consistent across games and actually in games as well. I think Liverpool had a really sort of difficult spell at the start of this year as well, whereas Man City have probably just been that little bit more consistent. So fair play to them, fair play to Liverpool. Great title race, 2 of the best teams in Premier League history by a distance.
Yeah, moving on to the London clubs and the way London clubs affected outcomes. Let's start with Spurs. They got top 4 football in the end. It looked likely going into the weekend, but confirmed it with a resounding win over Norwich. Hard luck for Arsenal fans that still managed an incredible win against Everton.
Yeah, I think both sets of fans would have been pretty happy with how their seasons went, really. I think Arsenal fans, if they look back at it in the cold, hard light of day in a couple of months' time, will think, you know, we've improved massively from 8th place last year. There's some really great performances this year. I remember that 2-1 defeat to Man City earlier this year, those wins against Chelsea and Man United. And then Spurs, what a story under Antonio Conte. I think it was 9th when they took over. I think only Man City and Liverpool have picked up more points than Conte during his time at the club. And it feels like next year, you know, he'll be competing for 3rd against probably Chelsea and maybe even Man United if Erik ten Hag gets it together there as well. So huge credit to Conte. He's improved a lot of the squad players. Emerson Royale's really stepped up, Sessegnon, and he's got the best form out of Son Heung-min that we've seen probably from his entire Spurs career, and he's been excellent during most of that time, so that just goes to show how brilliant his impact's been. Yeah, quick word on Son. He got the golden boot in the end with 2 goals. He didn't take a single penalty either, unlike Mo Salah and the likes of Harry Kane this year. Is he perhaps the best winger in the world right now? He's got to be in the mix for sure. I think Vinicius Junior might have something to say about that at Real Madrid. He's had an excellent year. Christopher Nkunku at RB Leipzig. But Son, his consistency over the last few years as well. He's so two-footed as well, so adept on that left-hand side. And just a great worker for the team as well. Seems like a great character. All the Spurs players and fans absolutely love him. And just because he's played with Harry Kane for so many years, he probably quite hasn't got the credit that he deserves. But as you say, 23 goals, none of them penalties. That's an incredible tally. And he's probably been more consistent than Salah across the season as well, with Salah starting the season so well, but slightly dipping towards the end of the campaign. But 2 great seasons from both of them. But Son, you know, more than deserves his moment. Yeah. In terms of competition for Europa League spots, West Ham were challenging Man U for 6th. Unfortunately, for West Ham fans, they didn't quite get the win they needed over Brighton, despite the fact that Crystal Palace did all the hard work for them in beating Manchester United. I know. I think West Ham fans will be a little bit annoyed about that, but I think they'd have taken Conference League football at the start of this season as well. And it's actually been a really enjoyable debut year in the Conference League as well. We've seen teams like Roma, Leicester, Feyenoord, Marseille do very well in that competition. It's been a really high standard. I think it's made the Europa League more competitive as well. It's given that competition a little bit more respect. So West Ham have got a reasonably small squad. They've had some injury issues, particularly in defence over the last few weeks. So to finish 7th, just 2 points off Man United in the end, not too bad at all. And David Moyes should rightly be pretty chuffed, having been so close to reaching a Europa League final as well. Exactly. And finally, let's talk about the way Brentford influenced things on the final game of the season. They managed to allow, well, not to allow, I'm sure they didn't try, to allow Leeds to manage to keep themselves in the Premier League. And unfortunately, Burnley will be heading down. How did that play out? Yeah, it was hugely exciting. It was a late Jack Harrison winner, and the scenes at the away end, the Leeds fans, it was great to see. think most people are probably, if as a neutral, would probably prefer Burnley to have gone down than Leeds. Leeds was so excellent last year. They played such magnificent football. They've had injury issues this year. They've had players losing form. They obviously sat Bielsa, which is a massive decision for them as well. And they've just about survived. And if they improve that defence next year, hopefully they won't be in this situation again. But as for Brentford, they've been absolutely brilliant this year. To finish 13th, 11 points clear of relegation, I don't think anyone really saw that coming at the start of the year, especially because they've come up through the playoffs of the Championship, and only 2 of the last 7 playoff winners have managed to stay in the Premier League. And of course, we can't not mention Christian Eriksen. It's probably been one of the best, I think, stories in world sport this year, let alone football. He's had an excellent impact, 1 goal and 4 assists, and the likes of Christian Norgard and Mbuemo, Tony has come into his own at different points this season as well. They can be very, very proud of it being an incredibly well-run club and put together a really, really special domestic first Premier League season.
Dougie Critchley there. You're watching London Live News with James Dickman. A reminder, our top story is coming up after the break. Plus, one of the world's oldest charities, dating back to 1147, on how they're celebrating the Platinum Jubilee. We'll hear about what the Queen's Royal Foundation of St Catherine have planned. Welcome back to London Live News. Let's just have a reminder of our top story from today. Boris Johnson insisted that Sue Gray was of course able to act independently, but declined to answer questions about a meeting he had with a senior civil servant about her report into Partygate. Well, Simon Clarke, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, said that Sue Gray instigated the meeting with Boris Johnson a few weeks ago. However, the PM's spokesperson admitted today that Downing Street had instigated the meeting themselves. Mr Johnson spoke whilst visiting a school in Orpington in South London today.
I'm, with great respect, not going to comment on or give any running commentary on her report until we get it. And I think that, to be frank, the moment is not very far off. It can't be long now before I'll be able to say something, but I really want to wait, as I've said for a long time now, until Sue reports.
Did you initiate that meeting, though?
I'm not giving any running commentary on the process in any way until the independent report is produced.
Well,
I think that is reasonable.
Boris Johnson there. Well, things got a little bit trickier for the PM this afternoon as photographs obtained by ITV News have cast fresh doubt on Boris Johnson's claims that he was unaware of rule breaking in Downing Street during the pandemic. 4 images show the Prime Minister raising a glass at a leaving party on the 13th of November 2020 with bottles of alcohol and party food on the table in front of him at number 10. Well, on that date, the UK was going through its second national lockdown, which meant the rules at the time only allowed for 2 people from different households to mix indoors. Monkeypox infections in London are rising, the capital's public health chief warned today. Contacts of cases at high risk of having caught the disease were advised to self-isolate for 21 days as well. A warning to the squeamish regarding the pictures we're about to show. Professor Kevin Fenton, London's Director of Public Health, also urged people to watch out for unusual rashes or lesions and to contact NHS's 111 number before going to a hospital, a GP, surgery or other health setting. New figures released today show cases are up once again across the UK. A 21-year-old woman who was stabbed to death in an Ealing alleyway was walking home with her friend when she was attacked. That's according to police today. Anya Jedkowiak died in the early hours of Tuesday last week after being found with stab wounds in Roberts Alley off Church Gardens. Detectives believe there were several potential witnesses they wish to speak to. Now, the Royal Foundation of St Catherine is one of the Queen's oldest charities and it dates back to 1147. The organisation is celebrating the Platinum Jubilee with a week of events at their centre in East London, which is the former home to the sisters from the TV series called The Midwife. Alicia has been hearing more about what they have planned from Roger Priest, the current master at the foundation.
We've got quite a story to tell. It started in 1147. Queen Matilda, who was living in the Tower of London and wanted a place of prayer and a place of care, caring for the poor. And that whole area of land around St Catherine's Docks, that was called the Hospital of St Catherine's by the Tower. That's when it all started, all those years ago. And when they built the docks, they evicted the foundation. It moved to Regent's Park and then came to the East End of London in 1950. So we've been here in the East End for about 70 years. So we're still a place of prayer, place of care, but we're a community charity, we're a retreat house, and we're an event space that gathers a lot of charities, not-for-profits to do creative work. So we bring people together who are making the world a better place, and we try and serve the local East End needs. So that's a bit about us.
So with your history, an appropriate organisation then to be celebrating the upcoming Jubilee?
Yes, we're so excited about this because the Queen is our patron. She appointed me directly. I got a letter from her 3 years ago saying that she wanted me to be the master of St Catherine's. And that tradition of the Queen appointing the masters goes right back to Queen Matilda in 1147. So the Queens have always looked after us, and that's very special. And Queen Elizabeth herself, she came to visit the foundation some years ago, and when I arrived, she sent the Duchess of Cornwall to come and check up on us and make sure we were we were doing the right thing. So this royal connection is so important, and we're so looking forward to celebrating Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee very shortly.
Yes, we've got a few pictures of those royal visits. What's it like for the organisation when you do have those royal visits? Very special, I imagine.
It means so much to us, and you know that one of the things about the Queen is that she really gathers people around that sense of identity and belonging and connectedness. And when the Duchess of Cornwall came, she was just so attentive to our work. How are we serving the community? She wanted to meet some of the young adults with special needs that we've been working with. She sat behind the cafe at the we have a community cafe, and she sort of served a bit of tea for guests. So she wanted to get involved and show that she cared and supported our work, and it meant so much. So many of our staff met her personally, and the royal connection really means a lot to us. And so we're going to have a really great party very shortly.
So talk me through it. How are you going to be celebrating? What can we expect?
As a community charity that connects to so many different community groups in the East End that use us, we thought we'd invite representatives of all the major community groups. We're going to have a big garden party. We've got this beautiful site at St Catherine's. We're in Limehouse, which is a very busy part of London. We've got the Rotherhithe Tunnel on one side. We've got the Limehouse Link Tunnel on the other side. We've got the DLR rattling on the other side. The coast to coast, cement works opposite. So around us is busyness. But when you walk into St Catherine's, it's suddenly this beautiful garden and a chapel and a cloisters, and it's a place of peace and tranquility. And so we're going to take our garden of tranquility and turn it into a crazy community party with jazz bands, with children's choirs. We're going to put tables all along the garden, bunting, and we're going to just celebrate together what it is to serve as a royal charity in the heart of East London.
Yeah, you've got lots of people from the community involved, some performances as well.
Yeah, that's right. We've got good links to local children's choir. Hamlet's Children's Choir is going to come and sing for us. We've got Grace Notes as a jazz collector. They're going to play some of the Queen's Duke Ellington favourites. We understand she likes a bit of that. So some of the dance tunes from the 20s and 30s. But for us, it's about using this moment in our history to celebrate the work that we're doing, which is working with some of the most vulnerable communities in East London. We provide a place of gathering, like our refugee network. Folk who come here as refugees, they need so much support, and to be able to gather together with English support, with job-seeking support in our space, that means a lot. And then just people come and stay with us for bed and breakfast to find a place of peace in the heart of East London. So we hope some of our regular guests just here for bed and breakfast, they'll come and join the party too. We just want to really gather people together to celebrate.
There you go, their celebrations are kicking off on Monday the 30th of this month. Right, stay with us for our final part this evening. A summer to remember at Kew Gardens. We'll hear about what the iconic horticultural centre in West London has planned. Hello and welcome back to our final part this evening. Now, Kew Gardens' new summer programme of events this year features 4 new large-scale art installations and a new exhibition, putting the focus on food. The programme shines a light on the future of food and takes a look at how our day-to-day eating habits impact the planet around us. Well, Paul Denton is the head of visitor programmes and exhibitions at Kew, and he's been telling Alicia more.
It's a different type of food festival than you can probably expect. We're taking a kind of different viewpoint. I mean, before I started at Kew, I didn't realise, we are a beautiful botanic garden. There's no question. But I didn't realise there was 300 scientists working here and trying to find solutions to the future of food and how it can help. How we can help save a changing planet. And that's really what we're doing with the food programme this summer. We're looking at really exclusively the ways Kew is working and Kew Science is working to help find those foods of the future that can kind of work against the changing climate of climate change.
So talk me through what people can expect. There's 4 installations, aren't there?
Yeah, it's a really fun festival. So it's quite, a topic that's really interesting, but we've made it really accessible and really fun. We've got some amazing artists that we've commissioned to respond to different food themes. So that can be food and well-being, what's the benefit of collective eating together and what's the benefit of plant-based foods, through to looking at everyday things in your cupboard that you might have and actually how those things are under threat and then what Kew's doing to help solve them. So one of the examples, we've got a beautiful exhibition called Future Food Stories. And this takes kind of everyday foods that you might love. Take coffee, for example. I'm sure you've had a cup of coffee this morning. Well, coffee's under threat. Climate change is happening. We're reliant on just 2 species of coffee around the world. And through heat and drought intolerance, it's becoming more difficult to farm those coffees. So we take that coffee pod and we put it in a beautiful case and we tell the story about actually Kew is finding other sources of that coffee that can be future-proof for the future. So you can save your coffee so you can have it for many years to come.
That is especially concerning to me. So I'm glad that you're keeping across that one. Some of the bigger installations that you're doing, one including 2 15-foot wooden trolls.
Yeah, this is Matt and Helen. So we commissioned a Danish artist called Thomas Danbo, and these are 2 giant trolls that sit beautifully into the gardens as if they've been just transported here. And they're eating out of bins. So they're eating plant-based food and plant waste. And really, it's a comment on actually the food we waste and how we should look at the things around us and trying to eat better in terms of a plant-based food, collective eating together. So you can come down to Kew Gardens, you can kind of interact with these beautiful wooden trolls that are kind of intricately made, and you can see the scale of them and eat your lunch next to them and just have a really great time next to them and really feel engaged with the subject.
Obviously, these are all installations, pieces of art. How does art and a topic like food mix?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We found, science is sometimes a really kind of difficult subject to communicate, and artists do a really clever thing where they can tell a story in a really interesting way. They're some of the best storytellers. So we work with them and they work with our scientists directly, really to look at actually how they can say and talk about their work in a really interesting way. So one example is the exhibition When Flowers Dream in the Shirley Sherwood Gallery. And so this is a beautiful kind of installation. Imagine Hansel and Gretel. So in times of food scarcity, you've got stories of food abundance, so houses made of food. And so what the artist has done here is work with our scientists and look at some of those foods that are under threat and in danger. And she's taken them and put them into this candy-coloured landscape. So you walk through this immersive world of food where you can really look and really engage with the story in a really interesting and fun way.
Obviously, this is a massive event for you. Much like Christmas, you do your amazing installation then.
Yeah.
How important are these kind of quite specific events that you do to Kew Gardens overall?
Yeah, we want to kind of really bring visitors in from a wide range of areas to Kew and just see the power of what Kew can do. And I think these kind of programmes really help people give a reason to come to Kew and really engage with our subject matter. So they're really vital in terms of how we communicate our stories. So we love doing them and we love how our visitors engage with them.
Food Forever is on now and it runs until September this year. Now, the Rocky Horror Picture Show has arrived at the Richmond Theatre as part of a countrywide tour starring Ore Aduba as Brad Majors. The show follows him and his fiancée Janet when they meet Dr. Frankenfurter when their car breaks down outside his house. Well, Christian Lavacoom stars as Riff Raff, having done more than 2,000 performances in the show around the world. He's been telling Alicia more.
anybody who has seen those old horror films or those hammer horrors, I think a lot of people would call them, they've always got a sidekick hunchback and like Igor, think Igor, and that's my part. They're always a bit twisted and a bit unusual and slightly creepy. I don't know what that says about me, but yeah, I seem to fit into it really well.
So 2,000 plus performances. Are you still keeping count? What will tonight be?
I don't know exactly, but it's probably at 2,100. So I only know that because 2,000 fairly recently. So I never imagined doing one show that many times ever. I don't think anybody does, but it's because I love it so much, and I have a fabulous time out there. And part of that is because the audiences of Rocky Horror are unlike any other audiences I've ever encountered. They're fabulous.
So you've done 2,000 plus performances, but how long have you actually been in the part of the show?
You know, it's been on and off over about 10 years, and it just keeps on coming back, and I just can't say no to it. And yeah, I don't know if you've been to Rocky Horror. If you haven't, you need to come along. But you know, it's an experience in itself. And so it's fabulous people watching, and even for me on stage, you know, the front few rows are always quite dressed up, and you know, backstage we're always going, "Have you seen this person? Have you seen that person?" It's a lot of fun for us and them.
Keeping you entertained every night. So you say you've been involved for nearly a decade now. Where did your journey with the show begin? How did it all start for you? Were you a fan before?
I've always been a fan of Rocky Horror, but when I was a teenager, my friends and I used to get together and watch the movie at someone's house, and we thought it was fabulous and very cool, and you know, well, you know, it seems to be the coming of age film for so many people. Everybody says, "I watched this when I was a teenager," and so yeah, so that really started my journey. But I never imagined being in it at that point. And I'm Welsh, but my family emigrated to New Zealand, and they were doing an Australasian tour of the production, and they auditioned in New Zealand. And I was like, "Yes, please, I'll go forward for that." And luckily, they cast me as Riff Raff because I never imagined myself playing that role.
We've been talking a little bit about how many times you've played the role of Riff Raff. I read that your body's actually started to adapt to the character.
It's true. I went into one of those DEXA scans a while back. They sort of, you know, measure your body composition and your muscle mass and your bone density. And the guy who was taking the scan said, "Oh, I see you've injured yourself on one side." And I was like, "Never injured myself on one side." But, oh, every night I pretend I've got a hunchback, I dance, and I walk around the stage as if I am injured. And so, yeah, my body is slowly turning into Riff Raff. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. But
one tradition, as you've mentioned, in the Rocky Horror world is people getting all dressed up to see the show. I'm assuming that has stuck around. That's still something people do.
It's stuck around. It goes in full force. You don't have to get dressed up, of course. You know, like I say, if you don't get dressed up, you're going to get some great people watching. But there's always some people dressed up. The closer you get towards the weekend, you know, sometimes it's hard to find anyone who isn't dressed up. I feel like Rocky Horror was kind of way ahead of its time in everything, really. And it was the original immersive theatre, really, because, you know, everyone comes dressed up as the characters. And if you haven't been, you might be a bit shocked that the audience behaves in a little bit of a different way to normal, and they occasionally shout out in between the lines. And I sing a song called "There's a part of a song called There's a Light," and you'll notice that everybody is like, you know, waving their sort of little camera phone lights, or you know, it's quite an experience. And yeah, I think it's different from anything. Rocky Horror is a part of pop culture, and it has been a part of pop culture now for nearly 50 years. And so, you know, if you haven't seen it, you need to come along and see why. You know, it's so different from anything else out there.
The Rocky Horror Show is on at Richmond Theatre until Saturday. Right, let's just take one last look at the weather for you now. Rain showers are expected to continue this evening and overnight, clearing up by the morning. But a cloudy start to the day tomorrow, highs of just 17 degrees during the day. A very similar picture on Wednesday as well, staying cloudy. Looking ahead to Thursday, the sunshine is making a return with highs of 21 degrees. Right, that is all we have time for this evening. Thank you very much for watching, and do join us again at the same time tomorrow. See you then.